Velkommen til dette møtet mellom Jessica Townsend og Bobbie Peers. Nå må dere you have to keep it down. I'm just doing the introduction in Norwegian, but we're going to have this talk in English. Vi skal ha praten på engelsk, og jeg regner med at det går greit for de fleste her, for de fleste som er glad i å lese fantasy, og det regner jeg med at gjelder dere alle, glad i å lese bøker, er ofte gode i engelsk, så jeg satser på at det går bra å følge med. So I'm going to be switching to English right now. Bobbie Peers is actually a Norwegian. He sounds he has a British sounding name, which is it's because he's half English, half Norwegian. And he's a film director, a screenwriter, and illustrator. So he has many hats. And in 2006, he won Palme d'Or, Gullpalmen, at the Cannes Film Festival for the short film Sniffer, which he both directed and wrote. So he is so far the first Norwegian who's won this coveted prize. And he published his first book in 2015, Luridium's Tyven in Norwegian, The Luridium Thief, or in American actually, The Impossible Puzzle.
Yeah.
So
impossible to say.
Yeah, they didn't like the name Luridium. Luridium is too confusing.
Yeah, because Luridium is a word that I made up myself. Yeah. So that didn't have any reference.
It's not an actual thing in the real world. It's a book series about the code-breaking genius William Wenton, and 36 countries have bought the rights to. I don't know if it's just the book or the whole series, or.
Well, the first 3 books.
The first 3 books.
It's 38 now, actually.
Yeah.
So it's
well, that's impressive. What about you? Your books are out in quite a lot.
Okay. Right on.
Well, I was worried it was going to be like bickering between you. So now none of you have to feel.
Actually, 39. No.
Okay. I think it's 40 actually.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, you can just fight between you. And so Jessica Townsend is Australian, and she told me that she's used to being noisy because she's Australian. So that's interesting. And she is the writer of the Nevermore series, The Trials of Morrigan Crow. And we here in Norway, we're used to a different name, Ingenlund. I'm sure you've been hearing this many times now because you've been on a
I've been
bit
hearing
of a tour.
it and trying to pronounce it correctly. But
well,
yeah.
go on.
Is it Ingenlund?
Very good, very good. It's the first book in what is to be a series of 9 books.
Yes.
Yes. And the second book is called Wondersmith, The Calling of Morrigan Crow. And the book is just out in Norwegian. And I'm sure there's a waiting list on this book. So no one is to just snatch this book and run away with it. Okay? So we're going to just guard this book. She is actually... you have something in common because you have a film background, and your books are going to be made into a film.
Yeah, we've sold the film rights to Fox, 20th Century Fox. So yeah, hopefully things are moving in the background.
Yeah, and I'm sure people are excited about that. I'm really fascinated by the author bio at Australian Hachette. They say about you that your pet fascinations include public transport, ancient cities, hotels, opera singers, Halloween, secret societies, and gigantic cats. And I think that's the perfect way to dive into your universe. So would you like to tell us a bit about the Nevermore universe?
About just the story in general, we set the scene. So Nevermore, or Ingenlund, is about a little girl called Morrigan Crow, who, so it's a second world fantasy, so it's set in a world that's not our world. And she's born on the unluckiest day. She's cursed, and because of this curse, she gets blamed for everything that goes wrong in the place where she is from. So if there's a swarm of bees or a fire in a high school or something like, or someone loses a competition, whatever it is, Morrigan always seems to get the blame for it. And then the flip side of this curse is that she knows when she's going to die. So Morrigan is supposed to die on her next birthday, but she doesn't, because that would make for a really bad book, and a short one.
Short and sad.
So instead she gets rescued and she gets spirited away to this magical secret city where she has been invited to compete against hundreds of other children for one of 9 places in the Wondrous Society. And the Wondrous Society is this organization of remarkable people with remarkable talents. But Morrigan herself doesn't have a remarkable talent, and if she's going to be allowed to stay in Nevermore and survive her curse, then she has to find a way to get into the Wondrous Society somehow.
You have a main character who does have a remarkable talent, and but he doesn't really know it. He stumbles upon it. Would you like to tell us a bit about William Wenton and his skill?
His skill is well, it's code breaking. So he likes breaking codes. It's sort of a family tradition. His father was a code breaker, and they used to live in London, but for some reason now they live like incognito in Norway.
And he doesn't quite know.
He doesn't know, and they have a different name also. His real name is William Wenton, and his incognito name, official name, is William Olsen, which is a really Norwegian, like standard name. And he's not allowed to do codes at all, but he knows it's got something to do with his past and his missing grandfather, and there's something that they're not talking about there. And then he ends up solving the world's most difficult code, which is sort of traveling. It's on a tour around the world, and his mother says, don't try to solve it, because they go there with the class on the school trip, and of course he does, and then everything changes in a way.
So he's also whisked away to a special place, but not in a different world. He's whisked away to London.
Yeah, well, this universe is also a little bit of a second world kind of, because it's got a different world history, because mankind has been on Earth for much longer in this universe. It's been there for like 400,000 or more than 400 million years. So, it's sort of it's about technology. So the premise of the story is that the people that used to live here 400 million years ago were more advanced than us. And then, of course, they nuked themselves, or whatever, I don't know. And then we started again, and that's us, in a way. Yeah.
About to nuke ourselves again.
I was going to say that's, next 5 years.
That's very forward to.
So, and then we begin again.
It's very true to life. Very scary. Yeah. But there is a bit of technology in your books too. I think a lot of, when people think about fantasy books, they're used to thinking of sort of a medieval society and horses and, well, you have dragons, but you also have cars, you have...
I do. I have kind of a mishmash because I do not have the kind of brain that could sort of stick with one thing and research it properly and make it, make sure there aren't any anachronisms. So, and I also it was a deliberate choice because I really wanted a world that you couldn't place it and you couldn't put it in a certain time. And so there's a public transport system called the Wonderground, which is basically like the London Underground. And, there's underground trains and there's motor cars, but there's also horse-drawn carriages. And it's very much kind of an elaborate mishmash of all sorts of places and times.
And there's traveling using umbrellas.
And there's that old chestnut of of traveling via umbrella, brolly rail, yeah.
Fluxbanen for those.
Is that
for
what
those
you call it here?
Fluxbanen.
Oh, I like that. That's better than brolly rail. That's great.
But they are quite different. Like William and Morrigan, because William is a very talented young boy, and he has to hide it. So I think people could possibly call him a gifted child, like those brilliant kids that don't really fit in. Is that something you had in mind when you were writing this book?
Well, not especially the gifted children, but I think it's a lot of children that sort of feel outside, especially in class. You've got like the one or two that likes a certain kind of music, or like fantasy, or like reading books, or are a little bit on the side. It's not a footballer or So it's more like that kind of a child that sort of
Doesn't quite fit in.
doesn't fit in. So, but in this case, William particularly is sort of a gifted or extremely gifted child, you know, and he discovers that he has even more inside of him, more potential. He just has to believe in himself and set it free, which is sort of the, in a way, you come to a world and you want to fit in, and you know. So it's,
yeah, I mean, I definitely felt like I was writing an outsider story.
Yeah,
you know, those are the stories that I'm interested in as well. Morrigan feels incredibly outside in both of the worlds. That, you know, she flits between these two kind of created worlds of the Wintersea Republic and then Nevermore or Ingenlund. And she doesn't quite feel like she fits in either of them, and she has to kind of carve out a place for herself and find new family and new friends.
Because she sort of feels like she doesn't deserve to be there. She feels like a fraud, in a way. So I'm thinking of the imposter syndrome. Because often when people who are very talented very often feel like they have been sort of tricking their way into their position. Is that something you identify with?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if you kind of have the same thing, but almost every author I've ever met has kind of been like, I don't know why they've got me here.
I'm waiting for people to just expose me as a fraud. I'm a writer too.
So. I'm constantly being like, no, they're just books. Like,
well, let's hope the film comes out before they expose you.
Right. Yeah, as long as the film comes out first, that's fine. No, imposter syndrome is a real thing. It's and I don't know kind of where it comes from or if it ever goes away. But you know, I'm waiting for it.
But Morrigan grows in confidence when she finds her place in the school, and she gets a really close friend, Hawthorne. Mm-hmm. And you have a friend character in your book too, Iskja.
Yeah.
So friendship is apparently very important in both your books. Did you think about that as a way of finding like a new family, because they're obviously different and they need to find new connections? Did you think of it in that way? Or?
Well, that's sort of, those were again my favorite stories as a child, is the found family story. I mean. There's a long, rich tradition of found families in children's literature. You know, obviously more recently Matilda and Harry Potter, but Oliver Twist. So those are the stories that I love, are stories of children who feel like their own families and where they started out don't understand or appreciate or love them in the way that they want, and so they get kind of this second chance where they get to go somewhere new and find a new family and carve out their own sort of place in the world. And I always talk about how, you know, much I love the found family trope. And I think people assume that I'm from some sort of terrible home, but no, everything's fine. My family are perfectly nice, and I'm sure they really love hearing me talk about how found families are so important. But those are really good stories. Like, those are, because there are plenty of kids who feel that way in real life, in the real world. So it's important to have that reflected in literature.
So the family in your books, they're not as cruel as the family Morrigan comes across in the beginning.
William's parents seem quite nice.
Yeah, it's they're okay. You know, they're sort of the only cruel thing is that there is or the father doesn't want him to do code breaking, which is like telling Mozart that he can't play the piano in a way. You know. So, but me too. I used to read, and I still love those kind of stories where you sort of a misplaced person, misplaced child, finds a connection with someone else. You know, and it's such a great feeling when you sort of feel outside in a situation, for example in school, and then suddenly you connect with a different group, whatever, if it's ping pong or it's, and then you feel that community, and it's such a great feeling to land in that kind of world in a way. So, and that's what I wanted William to come to, is just a world. He leaves a world where he can't do code breaking, and he's put into a world where code is the language, you know, which just opens up everything for him.
It's almost a bit like when people who are computer geniuses, and they enter this whole worldwide almost society of people who speak in this way, who understand. But the school he comes to, or the institute, it's not altogether nice. It's not like he's been rescued into a wonderful world. There are dangers in this world too. Can you tell us?
Well,
a bit more
the big
about that?
danger is the which goes back to the previous civilization 400 million years ago, because that was a world, and that's sort of what we're doing now, I think, with artificial intelligence, and because the luridium in the books, the substance, has always been in my head artificial intelligence. It's like just a lump of intelligent stuff, that I think we're going to end up with.
And William has it in his body.
Yeah, and it can think self, and it's sort of it's a computer, but it can think self. And so the previous war, there became a war between humans and this luridium, and it almost wiped out the human race, and some went underground. And now William is sort of trying to prevent this new war, because the luridium is coming back to Earth to sort of really finish the job, So he's so it becomes pretty dark.
But he himself is a threat
He
in a way.
He himself
is
a threat, yeah, because he was in a car wreck, and his grandfather, which has been fighting luridium in secrecy, put luridium into William to save him. So it was sort of he was creating something that he had been fighting for so many years, so it's a big dilemma for him. But yes, so William has sort of the dark side in himself also.
And Morrigan certainly has that. She's grown up thinking she's cursed.
Right, yeah, so, and that's, again, it's almost like kind of subverting, I think we've both kind of done the thing where you flip the chosen one or the chosen child kind of trope on its head, where you sort of like, well, they're not really chosen, but they're kind of the opposite of that, where they are considered this dreadful thing. And with Morrigan, it sort of goes back and forth, because she starts out having this vaguely superstitious thing kind of thrust on her against her will, and she grows up believing it and kind of really internalizing that and feeling like, oh, I am not just cursed, but I am a curse. I am a curse on my family and the people around me, and I'm bringing all of these terrible things to the world. And yet there is this kind of pragmatic, practical voice in her head, because she is such a sensible kid, that thinks, am I bad? Like, am I really evil? Am I actually to blame? Can this be right? There's a scene where, in the beginning of the first book, where she's, in the world where she's from, her father has to basically pay reparations to kind of people in society who Morrigan has supposedly wronged. So there's a woman who's well into her 80s, and she's decided to go ice skating, and she's broken her hip, and so that's somehow Morrigan's fault. Morrigan writes this letter, and she says, "Dear Mrs. Maloof, I'm sorry you thought it was a good idea to go ice skating, even though you're 1,000,000 years old and have brittle bones that could snap in a light breeze." She's got all these crossings out. So there is that voice, there is that part of her that's like, is this my fault? Is it? And then, without wanting to give away kind of spoilers for the ending of book 1, for those who haven't read it, it kind of, as I say, it's like a pendulum that swings, because she goes to Nevermore, and suddenly people aren't looking at her that way, because it's a completely different place where no one believes in this curse nonsense, no one knows about it. And so people are looking at her like she's fine, she's a normal person, and they accept her, and she has friends and finds this new family. And then she finds out something about herself that sort of brings it all kind of crashing down in a sort of quite similar way to William. Yeah.
Would you like to read a tiny excerpt? from the book, because I see you have,
Sure, yeah.
have it hidden there. I won't ask you to read in Norwegian, but, but I listened to you yesterday and reading in the tent, and it was so lovely hearing you read. So
this is the second book. Is it okay to read from the
well,
first chapter?
you'll have to
book
decide on the spoilers. And what do you
There's
think?
only one
is safe
spoiler,
to
and I
read?
can just redact it as I go.
well, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So this is chapter 1 of book 2, Wondersmith. Chapter 1, The Angel Israfel, Spring's Eve, Winter of 1. Morrigan Crow leapt from the brolly rail, teeth chattering, hands frozen around the end of her oilskin umbrella. The wind had whipped her hair into a state of extreme disarray. She tried her best to smooth it down while hurrying to catch up with her patron, who was already yards ahead, pelting along the noisy, swarming high street of the Bohemian district. "Wait," she called out to him, pushing her way through a knot of women wearing satin gowns and lush velvet cloaks. "Jupiter, slow down." Jupiter North turned back, but didn't stop moving. "Can't slow down, Mog. It's not in my repertoire. Catch up." And he was gone again, running headlong through the mess of pedestrians and rickshaws and horse-drawn carriages and motorised coaches. Morrigan hurried after him and walked into a sickly, sweet-smelling cloud of sapphire blue smoke, puffed right at her face by a woman holding a thin, gold cigarillo in her blue-stained fingertips. Ugh, foul. Morrigan coughed and waved the smoke away. For a moment, she lost sight of Jupiter through the haze, but then she spotted the top of his bright copper head bobbing up and down in the crowd and sprinted to catch up with him. "A child!" she heard the blue-fingered woman exclaim in her wake. "Darling, look! A child here in Bohemia! How frightful!" "It's a performance piece, darling." "Oh, indeed! How novel!" Morrigan wished she could take a moment to stop and look around. She'd never seen this part of Nevermore before. If she wasn't so worried about losing Jupiter in the crowd, she'd have been excited to see the broad streets lined with theatres and playhouses and music halls, the colourful jumble of bright lights and neon signs. People dressed in their finest piled out of carriages on every corner and were ushered inside grand theatre doors. Street hawkers shouted and sang, beckoning customers into rowdy pubs. There were restaurants so overflowing with diners that their tables spilled out onto the pavements, every seat occupied, even on this frosty spring's eve, the last day of winter. Morrigan at last made it to where Jupiter stood waiting for her outside the most crowded and most beautiful building on the street. A shimmering establishment of white marble and gold, Morrigan thought it looked a bit like a cathedral and a bit like a wedding cake. A brightly lit marquee across the top read, "New Delphian Music Hall presents G.G. Grand and the Gutterborn Five." "Are we going in?" puffed Morrigan. A stitch bloomed painfully in her ribs. "What, this place?" Jupiter cast a scornful look up at the New Delphian. "Heavens no, wouldn't be caught dead." With a furtive glance over his shoulder, he ushered her down an alleyway behind the New Delphian, leaving the crowd behind. It was so narrow they had to walk in single file, stepping over piles of unidentifiable rubbish and bricks that had crumbled loose from the walls. There were no lights down here. It had a strong smell of something dreadful that got stronger the farther down they went, like bad eggs or dead animals, or maybe both. Morrigan covered her mouth and nose. The smell was so noxious she had to fight the urge to vomit. She wanted more than anything to turn around and go back, but Jupiter kept marching behind her, nudging her along. "Stop," he said when they were near the end of the alley. "Is this... no, wait, is it?" She turned to see him inspecting a section of the wall that looked exactly like every other section. He gently pressed the grouting between the bricks with his fingertips, leaned in to sniff it, and then gave the wall a tentative lick. Morrigan gave him a look of horror. "Ugh, stop that. What are you doing?" Jupiter said nothing at first. He stared at the wall for a moment, frowned, and then looked up at the narrow patch of starry sky between the buildings. Thought so. Can you feel that?" "Feel what?" He took her hand and pressed it to the wall. "Close your eyes." Morrigan did so, feeling ridiculous. Sometimes it was hard to tell when Jupiter was being silly or serious, and she suspected on this occasion he was playing some stupid joke on her. It was her birthday, after all, and although he'd promised her no surprises, it would be just like him to pull an elaborate, embarrassing stunt that ended in a room full of people singing "Happy Birthday." She was about to voice her suspicions when, oh, There was a very subtle, fuzzy tingle in her fingertips, a faint humming in her ears. Oh. Jupiter took hold of her wrist and pulled it back ever so slightly from the wall. Morrigan felt resistance, as if the bricks were magnetized, and didn't want to let her go. And I feel like if I go on any longer, that might be too long. Do you want me to cut it off there? Or go finish to a little...
Well, I think we'll want to see them walking up the...
Okay, I'll go to that part. What is that, she asked. A little bit tricksy, Jupiter murmured. Follow me. Leaning back, he placed one foot on the brickwork, and then the other, and then, casually defying the law of gravity, proceeded to walk skywards up the wall, hunched over to avoid hitting his head on the other side of the alley. Morrigan stared at him in silence for a moment, and then gave herself a little shake. She was a Nevermorean now, after all, a permanent resident of the Hotel Deucalion, and a redacted spoiler. She really ought to stop being so surprised whenever things took a slightly odd turn. She took a deep breath, nearly retching again at the horrible smell, and copied Jupiter's actions exactly. Once both her feet were planted on the wall, the world pitched out of kilter and then righted itself again so that she felt perfectly at ease. The dreadful smell instantly disappeared and was replaced with fresh, crisp night air. Suddenly, walking up an alley wall with the starry sky stretching out in front of her seemed the most natural thing in the world.
Well, there's some interesting architecture in your books, and that's something you have in common. Because this hotel that you were talking about, Deucalion, it's a living hotel.
It is, yeah.
It changes and...
It does, so yeah, so it's a living building that kind of has its own bizarre, sprawling, slightly weird personality, but it's, when Morrigan first arrived, so it's beautiful, it has this beautiful cavernous lobby with, you know, a ridiculous, gigantic, pink sailing ship chandelier, and there are all sorts of interesting rooms that we haven't even explored yet. There are more to come in the future books, but for instance, there's a smoking parlor, which is not a room where people can go to smoke, but is a room that smokes. And so the walls have colourful scented smoke rolling out from the wall. Rolling out from them that kind of put people in certain moods. So they have lavender smoke to aid the sleepless, and honeysuckle smoke for romance, and chocolate smoke to aid in emotional well-being. And then seasonal things like at Christmas time, there's candy cane smoke and gingerbread smoke. And then sometimes the smoking parlour tries to experiment, not always successfully, so it has like insect repellent smoke in summer.
Nice.
But yeah, so there are great rooms like that, and then there are slightly nefarious rooms where terrifying things can happen. And Morrigan's bedroom, when she first arrives, it's very small and white-walled and very dull and boring. And excuse me, I have a cold. And then Jupiter says when she arrives, oh, I know it's pretty boring, but don't worry, it will get to know you, and then it will change. And so over the weeks and the months, as the room gets to know Morrigan, it just transforms and it grows and it shrinks and changes day by day, according to her personality and her mood and the things that she likes. And so one night she goes to bed sleeping in a princess four-poster wrought iron monstrosity, and then she wakes up swinging in a hammock because she's feeling slightly insecure.
You have an interesting talking door in the Lyridium Thief. So
Yeah.
could you tell us a bit more about the door? He's quite, or she, quite temperamental.
Yeah, it's he or it. I don't have a gender on the door, but it's a door that's in William's room that he gets at this the Institute for Post-Human Research, it's called. So it's full of, where magic is sort of replaced with technology. And so it's lots of robots and all kinds of stuff. But this door is sort of his friend, and it's someone he can talk to and discuss stuff and all this whole new world. But this door, and it's that's one of the funnest things that I write in my books. Is this, or now it's out of the books actually, which is kind of sad, but it's super fun. It was super fun writing it, and it wants to be a chef. It doesn't want to be a door. so it bakes a lot. So there's like a hand that comes out with cookies and try this.
As doors do.
Sorry.
As doors do.
Yeah, of course. And it also has different jobs. You know, so when William goes around the institute, he sort of stumbles into this door, having sort of extra jobs here and there. You know, suddenly he's in the fridge. You know, he's so it's fun.
You both seem to have a sense of comedy, even slapstick. Like in your second book, The Secret Portal, I believe it's called in English. It depends on the country, maybe.
It depends on the country. Yes.
Yeah.
It's I forget. I think in the States, it's the Secret Portal in the States.
Because there's a scene in a classroom with this crab that's causing a lot of problems, and that's a scene I would like to see in a film.
Yeah.
Which is that how you do you when you write those elaborate physical comedy things? Do you think in a film way, since you are a screenwriter?
Yeah, because it's the first book started as a screenplay because I just wanted to make the film, and I saw it would become much too expensive to make the film, so I wrote the book. So I've just continued sort of the screenplay structure in the books also. So it's very tight, very to the point, and very visual, because I just write the film that I run in my head when I'm working. So. And all those kind of physical scenes are just that. It's very physical and visual, and it's fun to write. You know, to create like, because that's Mr. Hamburger, which is the teacher, and he's
not
very
nice.
unpleasant. You know, so it's nice to make those kind of grown-up characters that can get beaten up by technology. You know.
I'm sure there must be I'm sure there are teachers here, but I'm sure there are some people who might want to see their teacher
get beaten up by a mechanical crab, you know, hands up.
Well, don't say anything.
I have a whole
your
list
teachers
of
are
my
here.
old teachers. Yeah.
But you have some grown-up characters in your book that are quite ambiguous. You have Jupiter North that we met in the scene that you read, and he's a guardian figure, but he's a friend and like a big brother and a father. But he also has his own life, and he's quite unreliable in some ways. You never know quite.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jupiter is this figure who rescues Morrigan and takes her off to Nevermore, and he is the person who is I think you call it a sponsor, we call it a patron in the English version. He's Morrigan's patron to join the Wondrous Society, and he is also the owner and proprietor of the Hotel Deucalion, and he is this very much a force for good in Morrigan's life. He's very paternal and silly and really funny, and he has this slightly sinister edge, and he's quite protective of her, but then he's not infallible either. You know, he's not the most reliable person. He sort of disappears for stretches at a time, or doesn't always keep promises and things like that. So, and I think the stories I loved growing up as a kid, they were. So sometimes where they fell down for me was that you felt like the adults were there as props. Mm-hmm. You know, you felt like, well, this person is here purely just to make it so, support this protagonist in doing this thing, and it doesn't feel like they even exist outside of this interaction that they've had with the child protagonist. But I wanted Jupiter and all of the adult characters to feel as if they are people with their own stories going on, and you just see these kind of glimpses of them. I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and my eldest brother and sister are 15 and 13 years older than me. So when I was a kid, they were adults. And what I remember from that time was these fleeting, my sister was in the Air Force, and my brother was this little black sheep vagabond traveling strange person who would just kind of, like Jupiter, he would sort of disappear for months at a time, and this was before the internet, so he's not emailing and FaceTiming us, you know, every couple of months we might get a phone call from a payphone, and he'd be like, yeah, I'm on the other side of the country, I spent the day busking on this, like, strange things. And so that's kind of what I remember from a kid, is that you don't really always feel like you're the center of the universe. You feel like you're kind of powerless, and all of these adults are having their interesting lives around you, and that kind of had a sort of realness to me that I wanted for Morrigan. But on the flip side, he is kind of this really strong, constant presence in her life, even though he has that slightly flimsy part of his personality. He's a force for good for her.
So who's the most supportive person in William's life? Because he has these people that he interacts with at the institute, but he's not always certain like what they want from him and if he can trust them. Yeah. So I also forgot I wanted to ask you to read something, and I'm kind of springing this on you. But would you like to read something about his time at the institute, or?
Yeah, I can find something.
It has to be Norwegian, but you speak Norwegian now because you spent a few days.
Yeah, I've been here for a full 24 hours, so
yeah,
I've got this.
So it would be great to hear something about his time at the
something from the institute.
Yeah.
It's. But what was the question about the influential person?
Yes, well, the influential person, or not exactly mental, but he does relate to these people, grown-up people with plans. He doesn't necessarily know what they want from him.
Yeah, and it's in the universe of these books. It's a little bit like the kids. Like I remember when I was a kid that it always seemed like the adults had like secrets. It was a special secret grown-up world when you had to go to bed, you know. And I remember laying there listening to, what are they talking about down there? You know, what are they plotting? What are they, you know? So I used to sneak down and to listen and become a spy and that kind of. What are they doing behind closed doors? You know.
Do you think your parents were plotting against you?
Yeah, a little paranoid 7-year-old. You know. But so it's a little bit like this in the books also, that there's always something that the grown-ups aren't telling the kids, so that becomes sort of part of the mystery. That they have to. There's a huge plot, of course, but then there's like tiny plots here and there. Why can't they tell us? Just tell us, you know. We're old enough. But it's the father that is sort of the mentor. Mentor figure in William's life that he's.
But the parents are quite a bit wary of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't like that, or they maybe it's a little bit the same as Jupiter, because the grandfather is sort of, he's in and out of his life. Because he's out on doing like archaeology and doing all kinds of stuff, so he doesn't know him that well. And in William's head, he sort of grows into this mythological great man, which he is. His mother says that he is not at all, you know. But he turns out to be okay, you know. Okay, finding something from the institute. Maybe you should talk a little bit while I...
talk amongst yourselves.
What do you think of this guy? Or do you mean like to these guys?
Yeah, So I was thinking that we would do the read in Norwegian, but then after hearing Jessica read yesterday, I wanted you to have the chance to read it in your own voice. And then unfortunately, we don't. His books are out in English, but we don't have those books here. So now, poor guy is just like frantically looking to find something to find.
It's a weird thing,
read.
like when someone says, "Can you read from your book?" Because you just suddenly forget what happens in your book and where it happens. Like I don't know what it's about. I don't know where to look in this book.
But your readers, they know the details, don't they? Do you get people talking to you like, oh, and you know, and that scene, and you've actually forgotten? Are you like that? Where you?
I mean, so I'm
do you
2
remember
books
everything?
in. I'm 2 books in. I feel like by book 6, 7, 8, that I will definitely have people reminding me of that. You know, but you said, I'll be like, I do. Yeah. What I find is that everywhere you go, all my readers, like, I mean, I have adult readers as well, but kids especially get so specific in their questions, which I love, because those are the questions that I love answering, is like, when this happened on page blah, 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 did you mean, and will this mean for the future, and what are these characters going to do? So I really love that, and I found that that's the same everywhere you go. Like, I've toured in Australia and the UK and New Zealand and America, and kids are like that everywhere. How'd you go?
I think I have something.
That was fast, yeah. Go ahead.
I've never read this aloud before, which is kind of fun. So this is, I'll do the explanation a little bit in English so you can follow, but it's, this is the, sort of the first when William has solved the code, and these bad guys that they have been hiding from in Norway, they sort of find out where they live, so they have come after them. And now he is taken away by 2 robots and flown in a private jet to England, which is my dream to fly.
I've read this bit in English, so I can imagine along with you.
Yeah, okay, so great. So this is when he comes, this is his first, when he sort of walks in the door at the Institute. Let's see, yeah, so he's in the back of a car. William bråvåknet og kikket seg forskrekket omkring. Han lå i baksetet i bilen igjen. Bilen bremset og stoppet foran en stor steintrapp. William blunket søvnen ut av øynene og satte seg opp. Han kjente igjen bygningen fra videoen han hadde sett på flyet. Den så enda større ut i virkeligheten. Så banket det plutselig på vinduet, og en hanskekledd hånd gjorde tegn til at han skulle komme ut. Døra gled opp, og William tok et forsiktig skritt ut. Oppdaget at noen hadde tatt på ham et par nye sko. «Velkommen, William Wenton», sa en høy og mørk skikkelse og bukket dypt. William ble stående og se på mannen som kikket alvorlig tilbake på ham uten å fortrekke en mine. Han var kledd i svart snippkjole, hvit skjorte og blå sløyfe. Han så veldig høytidelig ut. «Jeg er Tim Bulter», sa han med flat stemme og strammet seg opp. «William», sa William og rakk ut hånda. «Det vet jeg», sa Bulter. De håndhilste kort. «Jeg er sjefsbutler her på instituttet», sa Bulter. «Hvor er den?» «Hvor er hva?» spurte William. «Bagasjen din?» «Jeg har ikke med meg noe», sa William litt brudd og smilte unnskyldende. Bulter kikket forskrekket på ham. «Har du ikke med deg noe?» utbrøt han. «Ingen rene underbukser, strømper eller noen ting?» William ristet på hodet. «Tannbørste», sa Bulter. «Jeg fikk litt hastverk», sa William og kjente at han ble rød i kinnene. «Ok», sa butleren. «Kom med meg». William ble stående og se på mens Bulter tok av seg den ene hansken og veivet hånden fram og tilbake foran en liten rød sensor i døra. Bulter senket hånda og tok på seg hansken igjen, i det døra ga fra seg 2 korte klikk og svingte opp. «Stig på», sa han og gjorde tegn til at William skulle gå først. William gikk inn, men stoppet når noen plutselig ropte «Pass opp!». Han så seg omkring, men kunne ikke se hvor stemmen kom fra. Noe traff ham hardt i beina, så han mistet balansen og gikk i bakken. William satte seg fortumlet opp og tok seg til skinnleggen. «Du må se deg for», hørte han Bulter kjefte bak seg. «Unnskyld», sa William og kikket opp. Men nå så han at Bulter ikke kjeftet på han. Han sto og viftet med pekefingeren mot en liten elektrisk støvsuger på gulvet foran seg. «Sorry, altså, jeg var på vei til TV-stua. De viser Terminator i reprise», sa støvsugeren unnskyldende mens den kjørte rastløst frem og tilbake. «Støvsugere ser ikke på fjernsyn», sa Bulter. «Tilbake til dokkingstasjonen med deg. Du trenger all strømmen du kan få til i morgen.» «Ja vel», sa støvsugeren, snudde og kjørte sakte tilbake dit den hadde kommet fra. «Sorry, kompis», mumlet den til William i det den passerte. «Forbaska maskiner», snøftet Bulter og gikk videre. William reiste seg opp og så seg omkring. De befant seg i en stor hall. I taket hang en enorm lyskrone. Foran ham strakte det seg en stor trapp som førte opp til 2. etasje. Den trappen må være like bred som en firefelts motorvei, tenkte William. «Kommer du?» ropte Bulter. William begynte å gå, men stoppet igjen da han fikk øye på en firkantet metallboks med små, tynne bein som trippet nedover trappene. Da metallboksen nådde det nederste trinnet, snudde den og begynte å gå opp igjen. «Hva er det der?» spurte William. «En trappobot», svarte Bulter uinteressert. «Hva brukes den til?» sa William. «Den går i trapper», sa Bulter. «Kom, vi har ikke hele dagen.» «Men hva er vitsen med en robot som bare kan gå i trapper?» spurte William mens han prøvde å holde følge med Bulter bortover en lang gang. Dette er et forskningsinstitutt. Her er det meste av eksperimentell karakter, og veldig ofte fullstendig ubrukelig. Bulter stoppet ved en høy og flat robot som sto urørlig opp etter veggen. Det var som om den prøvde å ikke bli sett. Ta denne her for eksempel, fortsatte Bulter. Dette er den mest ubrukelige av dem alle. En krangellobot, sa han med forakt i stemmen. Det er ren løgn og ondsinnede rykter, kom det fra krangellboten. Hva gjør en krangellobot, spurte William. Krangler, selvfølgelig, sa Bulter, og skulle til å gå videre. Det er bedre enn å være en billig pingvinetterligning i snippkjole, kom det kjapt fra krangellboten. Bulter stoppet. Okay,
really
great.
Sorry, because we are like on a strict time
Yes.
schedule, and it's a perfect cliffhanger because we're all wondering what on earth is going to happen with this robot.
Yeah.
It felt a bit rude to
No, go ahead.
interrupt you like this, but we are out of time, which I could go on chatting to both of you.
I had a question for him, but that's fine. I'll ask him later.
Is it okay to? Can we get a thumbs up if this is okay with the question, or are we?
Is there?
Yeah.
You can ask the
It's
question.
just a
Go
really
on.
brief
We got the
it's a
time.
translation question, actually, because I'm curious. Because I thought it was really funny in that scene where, in the English version, the butler's called like Tim Cutler, the head butler. I thought that was really good. So, like in Norwegian, is it a little play on words as
It's
well?
the same.
It's the same name. Okay, I was listening for it, and I was like, I heard something,
Yeah,
but I mean.
but I had I had Bulter in the English translation also, but somehow they didn't quite like it, or it was something it didn't sit quite well with them for some
Right,
reason.
okay.
So we changed it to Cutler, was it?
Tim Cutler.
Tim Cutler, yeah.
Tim Cutler, head
Yeah.
butler.
We'll have to end with the head butler, Tim Cutler, which is a great name. And thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed listening to these two interesting writers, and all their books are in the library, so you can go on and read them. But as I said, don't run away with that book because there is a waiting list. So thank you, and thank you both for coming.
Thank
Thank
you. That was great. Thank you. That was lovely.